Alright, so what we're going to do today is we're going to get started with the gWeasleGUI. Alright, so this is just a quick start. If you already have the tools downloaded or something, you can just skip that part of this the step. This is basically if you're starting without any software. So what we're going to do is go to the support page. Alright, so we have the GreaseWeazle Premium Drive V4 here. We're going there and we're going to go ahead and go to the software section. So what we need now is these two things. We need the GreaseWeazle tools and we need the gWeasleGUI, because the gWeasleGUI uses the host tools, these tools. And these are also, they can be used as the command line tools. So if we go here, it takes us to the GitHub repository for the GreaseWeazle host tools. And over here we have the release. Current release is 1.15.1. So we're going to go ahead and go there. And we're going to download the latest release. And since we have Win64, we're going to go ahead and download the Win64. Now this is a zip archive. If for some reason this assets is closed, you just open it with the arrow, by the way. So we have it downloaded. We're going to go ahead and open it. And we've opened it, but it's still in the zip archive. So we're going to extract it from the zip archive file. And we'll go ahead and leave it in the downloads. That's fine to use it from the downloads. You may choose to put it in another location like program files or something. And we're going to extract all. Now we have it extracted to this location in the downloads folder. Alright, so we're going to go back to the support page and we're going to get the Windows GUI. This is for Windows, this GUI is for Windows, so there'll be another GUI for Ubuntu and other operating systems, but that's why this video is on Windows 11, but this process will work for Windows 10 and most versions of Windows. And so here is the GitHub repository for gWeasleGUI. We're going to scroll down and we're going to see, you can see some nice little pictures that kind of give us a description of the GUI. But we're going to go over here to releases, just like we did on the host tools. And we're going to go into the release, and the current release is beta 9. And this just tells us a little bit about what changed from beta 8. We're going to go on assets, and we have the gWeasleGUI exe. We'll go ahead and download that. All right. And now we have the host tools and the GUI. So we're going to go ahead and run the GUI. You may choose to move the GUI exe to a different location. We're going to run it from the downloads because that's just fine. But you'll probably want to move it somewhere else where you can use it. Now, if you see this window protection on your PC, it is fine. The executable is signed. It has a publisher and it is signed. So I'm not sure why this Defender Smart Screen does show up, but you can just click run anyway. It is code signed, so it's protected. Like the signature would be invalid if it was infected with a virus or something. So we'll go ahead and run it. And here is the GUI. Now, the first thing we'll see here is that the gWeasleGUI, even though we downloaded the host tools, it does not know where we downloaded the host tools to. So we have to tell it where we downloaded the host tools to. for it to operate because it uses the host tools. So we're going to go ahead and click select, and I'm going to go to downloads, which is where we left the host tools from the previous download, and there it is, the GreaseWeazle 1.15.1 Win64, as you recall earlier. And we're going to go inside there, and what we're looking for is the gWeaxe. Now, this dialog only accepts gWeaxe. That is what this dialog is for, the GreaseWeazle exe. Okay, that's what we're selecting. We will select it, and that is all we should be selecting here. Selecting any other file will not work. And then we're just going to click open. All right, and so immediately gWeasleGUI loads the tools and sees that it is version 1.15.1, which coincides with what we downloaded. We can go over to our device and we can see we're on COM port 3, and GreaseWeazle v4 is on COM port 3, and firmware is 1.4. Here is our serial number. You may need the serial number if you're checking on your warranty status at warranty.leapmaker.com. And over here we can see that all the serial ports that are associated with GreaseWeazle, and I have 4 GreaseWeazles connected to this computer, and that's because WinUAE in Amiga emulation allows up to 4 GreaseWeazles to act as Amiga floppy drives, and it limits the number of floppy swapping that I need to do. So it's just nice. Like if I use something that's multi-floppy games that use more than one floppy, then I won't need to swap the disks. And so there's a lot of options here. So right now, this is the action. The action is kind of like our command, GreaseWeazle command. There's a lot of options. Info is basically just to view information about the drive. So there's no parameters to the info, right? There's a very few parameters, but there's none implemented in the GUI except for device, which is always present, and that's COM port 3. So let's go ahead and go down here and click Action Help. This is going to tell us exactly what parameters are available in our action. Action Help is the help for this action. So if we do that, it shows us that gWeaxe info has two basic parameters besides help, which is always there. It's device, which is over here in device, the port, and bootloader. Now, bootloader is not in the GUI. It's not supported in the GUI. This is not relevant to v4 of the device, but if you did want to use that with gWeasleGUI, this option you would put with the dash dash, you'd put dash dash bootloader in your additional arguments, right? So we can actually do that if we want to. It won't really do anything because we are using it on a v4 board, so it won't do anything. Now we're going to go ahead and execute our info command, and we're going to report the elapsed time. So this is optional. You can do this. It just tells you how long the action took if you check that checkbox. If you do not check that checkbox, it will not tell you. And then we're going to go ahead and execute our info command with our bootloader argument. And basically it runs the command, and we see the same information that's over here under device in the device tab. But this is the information that the info command outputs, and it took 2.09 seconds to run. Command is completed. So that's the basics of it. There's a lot of actions we could take. read, write, convert, erase. Most people will just use read and write, but you could use other things. You could here like RPM. RPM is a small command. We'll do the action help so we can just look at what RPM is. It offers device, which is over here under device tab. It offers drive. So that's basically the IBM A and B. And then you have the number of iterations to run. So these are basically both optional because they will just use the default value of 1. And the drive is set to drive A anyways, so no reason to change this. And here is an example. This tells us about the drive, right? So Shugart bus or the IBM PC bus has AB and Shugart has 0, 1, 2. But those are really not relevant to the GreaseWeazle V4 Premium drive as supplied on the support web page. So we're going to go ahead and just execute this. Now to run this command RPM, you will have to have a disk in the drive. Just an FYI, it only measures the RPM of the drive with a disk, with a floppy disk in the GreaseWeazle drive. We'll execute that, and it took 1.32 seconds. And it shows us the rate, the RPM rate of 301 and a period of 199 ms. That's pretty standard. So if you're worried about like consistency of the drive, you could do like 10 iterations, right? And just see how it's running, and basically it gives you a little summary at the bottom. It's an interesting little command that probably most people will not use. Now we go over to the read command and we have a lot more options. Most people just use this format type and select the plethora of format options that are available, such as Amiga DOS, Atari ST, Commodore, pretty much all the IBM formats, GEM, PC like Windows 98, and RAW format, Acorn. So if we use Amiga DOS, and we're not going to use the distdefs file because distdefs is when you want to create your own custom format. You can build it here, and then you can have your own format in here. If there is not one in here that fits your needs, you can build your own disk definition. So basically, we're going to try to read the floppy with Amiga DOS format. We're going to select, this is going to be a new file, right? So one thing about here is if it's an existing file on your hard drive locally, the existing file button will be used. If it's a new file that you're creating on your hard drive, new file button will be used. The double arrows indicate where the data is coming on the GreaseWeazle drive. So if the double arrows are pointing to the right, that means the data is coming from the GreaseWeazle device and going into the file. If the double arrows are pointing to the left, that means you're taking the file, that's like a write command, you are taking the file and pushing it up to the GreaseWeazle drive. So we're going to go ahead and make a file, and I'm not going to put it in our GreaseWeazle tools folder, but I am going to put it in the main GreaseWeazle folder. But we don't want to use A2R format, so these are all the supported formats. What we're going to use is ADF. right? So we're going to do that, and we're going to click Save. We're just going to create our own file name, and we're going to select where we want it to go, and we're going to click Save. And you will see the folder and the file where this is going. Okay, so we're going to read from the disk in this format and store it in this file. And it's reading Amiga DOS. And in this way, we could read the files we could read all our Amiga DOS disks into ADF files and back them up on our Windows PC. So we report the elapsed time of 39.64 seconds. So that was pretty fast. The read parameters also have an option for Amiga DOS HD, right? But this is not an HD disk, so I wouldn't use HD to read a double density Amiga DOS disk. That can be more useful for like other features, but sometimes if you have an HD disk, you will need to select HD. And that's the basic gist of it. So I'm not going to get any further into the details of how to get set up and started with the GreaseWeazle. This is just a quick start video.